It was supposed to be a normal night shift, routine monitoring of radars and empty skies. But when a low-level technician noticed a signal that shouldn't have been there, the command decided to erase it, along with the witness himself. What happened next silenced the Army. They said the radar blinked once, just once. And then they said it didn't blink at all. Funny thing, memory, especially when you're standing in a concrete shack that smells like old wires and wet wool, staring at a screen that just told you someone's lying. Maybe it was the Luftwaffe. Maybe it was us. Maybe it was everyone. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Charles Hawkins, technician, formerly a machinist back in Chicago, now stationed in a classified operations annex. 2 miles off a runway, nobody even bothers to sweep anymore. War has a way of dumping men like me in rooms nobody wants to enter, and then acting like we were never there at all. We were the invisible crew. Black men with grease under our nails and college smarts in our heads. But hell, none of that mattered here. Out here, you were either in the photo or behind the damn camera. Guess which one we were. It started on a Monday. Not the worst Monday, but close. Rain hammered the tin roof so loud we couldn't hear each other without shouting. Will, big guy from Detroit with a laugh that could shake a wall loose, was swearing at a stubborn frequency loop. Larry, our radio man, a soft-spoken genius who once played trumpet with Cab Calloway, was tweaking the sensitivity on a coil barely holding together with duct tape and prayer. Me. I was staring at the screen, watching the hum, listening for the pop. Then it happened. A blink, a clear, hard blip. Fast, sharp, no mistake about it. "Will," I said, dead calm. "We got something." Larry leaned in. "From where?" "Northwest sector, high altitude, moving fast." He didn't question it. He just grabbed the pad and started logging. Then came the sound. I hate more than a misfire. Those damn boots. The crisp ones. Marching like they had a purpose they didn't earn. Enter First Lieutenant Thomas Morgan, fresh out of some academy with polished boots and a handshake softer than a silk tie. He walked in like he was checking a vending machine. "What's the excitement, gentlemen?" he asked with that smile you could slap off a poster. "We got a contact," I said. It was, "No, you didn't." Just like that. Didn't even blink. "Sir, we all saw it," Larry added. "No, you saw interference. Happens all the time in these prototypes." He looked around like he was bored already. "Run a recalibration and keep the logs clean. We don't want to scare anyone with ghost signals now, do we?" Then he turned around and left. We stood there, each of us holding silence like it weighed 50 pounds. Will finally spoke. "You believe this mess?" I didn't answer. I just looked at the screen again, like it might blink twice just to back me up. "Let me paint you the full picture. They shoved us in this radar shack, not because we were the best, but because we weren't a risk to their pride. That's what you were back then, if you were a smart black man in uniform. A risk. A problem to manage. You could build the machine. You could run it. But God forbid you tell a white officer it's working better than he thinks. The shack was barely insulated. In winter, your fingers went numb before your coffee did. The equipment. Scraps salvaged from a shipment that was not ready for frontline use. Translation. Give it to the colored unit and hope for the best. But we made it hum. We made it sing. Larry had tuned that coil tighter than a church snare drum. Will soldered connections so clean, even a German engineer would nod. And me? I watched, waited, logged every damn thing. And the one time it blinked, the one time we had proof something was out there, they shut the door on it. Later that night, I sat outside, listening to the rain slow to a whisper. I lit a cigarette with hands still shaking a little. Not fear, not cold, just that kind of frustrated anger that turns quiet in a man after years of swallowing it. I thought about writing a report anyway, but we both know how that goes. Reports disappear. People misplace them. Voices like mine end up under coffee cups in rooms where medals outnumber the brains. Still, I made a note, not on paper, in me. I remembered the blink, the timing, the feel of the air, and I remembered Morgan's voice, the kind of voice that always gets the last word, not because it's right, but because it can. I didn't know what that blip was. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew what it meant. We saw it. And they didn't want us to. That was the first war I fought. Not against the Luftwaffe, against silence. And silence, it's louder than bombs when you know what's behind it. What happened next flipped the whole damn board. You do not want to miss how this story turns. The thing about writing a report nobody wants is it writes itself. You don't need fancy words, just the facts, just the truth. And truth, my friend, has a funny way of collecting dust when it comes from the wrong hands. I filed it anyway. Typed it out on that clunky German typewriter they shoved in the corner of our shack like an afterthought. My fingers hit the keys, slow, deliberate. One line at a time. Time of contact, direction, estimated speed, radar signal strength. I signed it too. Full name, clear and proud, Charles Hawkins, Senior Technician, Radar Experimental Unit 27. Then I walked it across the field to the operations tent. Mud up to my ankles, wind slicing through my coat. The war didn't care if you were wet or cold, but it sure cared if you weren't quiet. Inside the tent, the heater buzzed like it was on life support. Papers everywhere. Some guy snored in a corner. Captain Harlan sat behind a folding desk with a cup of something that had long given up on being coffee. I handed him the report. He squinted at the first page, like I had just handed him a crossword puzzle in Greek. What's this? Radar contact. Confirmed. Multiple witnesses. He leaned back in his chair. Didn't say a word for a long second. Then he chuckled. A short, clipped sound. Not amused, just tired of hearing things he didn't ask for. You boys sure know how to keep busy, huh? He set the report on top of a stack so thick it could stop a bullet. I'll pass it up. Maybe somebody'll want a bedtime story. That was it. That was all he said. Didn't ask questions, didn't look twice. He just filed it under things that can wait until it's someone else's problem. Back in the shack, Will was rewiring the transmitter like it owed him money. Did he take it? He asked, not looking up. Oh, he took it. With the same enthusiasm, take out the trash. Larry leaned against the wall, arms folded. We saw it, all three of us. Can't take that away. No, I said, but they sure can pretend they didn't. 2 days passed, then came the inspection. Now, inspections don't usually come with warning, but this one did. Too clean, too polite. A polished staff car rolled up just after dawn. 3 men stepped out, clean uniforms, no mud, no purpose in their eyes. One of them, Major Wilkins, wore a clipboard like a weapon. They didn't ask for names, just serial numbers, equipment logs, maintenance cycles. And then, where are your radar signal logs from April 17th? My chest tightened. Larry spoke up first. Filed with operations, sir. Hand-delivered. Wilkins didn't blink. No copy retained on site? No, sir, I said. Standard protocol, originals only. He made a note on his clipboard. The kind of note that doesn't record. It judges. The rest of the inspection felt like theater. They opened drawers we never used, measured grounding wires like that would tell them anything. When they left, they didn't say a word. Not goodbye, not thank you, nothing. But an hour later, operations called. Effective immediately, Unit 27 is being reassigned to storage and maintenance rotation. All radar duties suspended. I sat on the steps of the shack after they hung up. The clouds were low that day, pressing on the sky like they were trying to keep the ground from speaking. Larry stood beside me, quiet. Will lit a cigarette and offered me one. I didn't take it. My hands were too still for that. "They think we lied," Larry said. His voice wasn't angry, just flat, like he had seen this movie before. "No," I replied. "They think we saw something we weren't supposed to." The next morning they came with crates. Storage detail. Half a dozen young guys with confused faces and orders to relocate all sensitive equipment to depot. They treated the radar like furniture. Wires yanked. Tubes stacked like canned beans. I watched the machine go piece by piece. Larry didn't say a word. Will just shook his head. "You'd think we stole something," he muttered. "No," I said. "We just proved something. That's worse." We were reassigned to inventory, basement of the supply depot, miles from the runway, surrounded by old uniforms, rusted parts, and file cabinets full of missing forms. That's where they put people they want forgotten. No more radar, no more signals. Just silence. But you know what silence does? It gives you time to think. And I thought about that blink, about the pattern, about the angle. Something was out there, and someone knew it. Just not the people in charge, or maybe especially not them. I started drawing it again, late at night, on the back of packing slips. I sketched out the radar readout from memory, labeled it, measured it. Every line felt like a push against the wall they built around us. One night, Will leaned over my shoulder. "You still chasing ghosts, Charlie?" "No," I said, just trying to remember what truth looked like before they erased it. That week, 2 other tech units got the same treatment. Reassigned, stripped of gear, told to stand down for reassessment. Funny how that happens, and funny how nobody talks about it. But here's the thing. When the sky finally does open up and the wrong signal comes through, there's gonna be someone asking, why didn't anyone see it coming? And maybe someone will remember a little shack, a blink on a screen, and 3 men they never let speak. This is it. The fire's about to catch. Everything that built up, it's coming to a head in the next chapter. You won't want to miss how this breaks wide open. If you also believe that one idea can change the course of history, sign up. In this story, one man tried to warn of a catastrophe, but whether anyone listened to him is up to you to decide. Write in the comments, who do you think is the real hero of such stories? The general, the engineer, or the one who simply dared to tell the truth? You ever walk into a room and know they were just talking about you? Not loud, not cruel, just that shift. That hush that tastes like dust and guilt. That was Tuesday morning. I walked into command dispatch to drop off a requisition form. A simple form, nothing special. And every head in that room turned about 2 inches too slow. Not one word. Not one good morning. Just tight jaws, stolen glances, and the kind of silence that always means you stepped into the wrong conversation at the wrong time. And I knew, not just suspected, knew. Something had changed. I handed the form to the clerk. She didn't look me in the eye. "Is there a problem?" I asked, steady. "No, sir," she said, voice a little too light. "Just Busy. Busy? There were 3 people in the room, and 2 typewriters not even on. I stepped outside and the wind hit different. The sky looked normal. The mud still stuck to your boots the same way. But the air had that stillness, the kind you get before a storm that doesn't show up on weather reports. I walked back to the shack. Larry was already there, hunched over the console, eyes bloodshot. Will had a cigarette dangling from his lips and a wrench in one hand. He wasn't fixing anything, just holding the wrench like a man holds onto something when he knows the ground is shifting under his feet. "You feel it too?" I asked. Larry nodded, slow. "They stopped logging us last night." "What?" Shift supervisor came in, took the tapes, said they were being relocated to centralized storage. "They take the backups," Will grunted. "Everything. Even the ones we hid behind the old compressor, like they knew exactly where to look." That's when we knew. This wasn't about mistakes or miscommunication. This was about erasure. Deliberate. Surgical. Like a scalpel cutting a name off a tombstone. We didn't panic. That's not how we were built. You live long enough in someone else's system. You learn not to panic. You calculate. You breathe through the nose. You watch. So we did what we always did. We went back to work. Rigged up a secondary loop using leftover wire and 2 spare transistors Larry pulled from a broken transmitter. The signal wouldn't be perfect, but it would hear, and we were listening. That night it came again, the same ping. Soft, distant, but unmistakable. A triple pulse echo followed by a modulation shift. Same source vector, same trajectory. I logged it by hand, no tape, no machines, just paper and graphite because paper doesn't disappear when somebody higher up decides it should. Will sat across from me, watching. "What are we doing, Charlie?" I looked up. "We're writing down what they're trying to pretend ain't happening." The next day, they shut down our section. No warning. Just a white sheet pinned to the door. Closed until further notice. Equipment under review. That's how war works sometimes. Not with explosions, but with paper and staples. We weren't reassigned. We weren't relieved. We were just paused. And in a war, being paused is the closest thing to being erased. Command didn't speak to us. The officers who used to nod as they passed, eyes down, the cook who used to slide us extra biscuits. Nothing but tray clatter. Even the mail stopped showing up. That's when Larry said it plain. They don't want us out. They want us to vanish. We met that night in the back of the mess hall, just the 3 of us. No plan, no speeches, just tired eyes and hot hands. Will finally said what none of us wanted to say. Maybe they're right. Maybe it's just better to let it go. I looked at him, really looked, and I saw it. Not weakness, not fear. Exhaustion. Because when you've been holding up the truth this long, and all it ever does is weigh you down, you start wondering if it's worth it. I didn't argue. I didn't give a speech. I just took out the logbook, opened it, and slid it across the table. "I'm not trying to change the world," I said. "I'm just trying to keep it honest. At least in this book." Larry picked it up, studied the handwriting, and Will? He lit another cigarette, stared at the smoke for a long minute, then nodded once. "Then let's make it the right book." That was the moment everything turned. Not because someone outside gave us permission, but because we stopped asking for it. We didn't need clearance. We didn't need command. We just needed to keep listening and writing it down. Because the thing they never understood is this. You can shut down a machine. You can silence a transmitter. But you can't kill a signal if someone out there is still tuned in. We just hit the edge of the storm. The next chapter, that's where the lightning strikes. The knock came at 5:43 a.m. Not a soldier's knock. Not that hurried, "Sir, wake up, we're under attack" kind of knock. No, this one was quiet. Measured, like someone was real sure they had the upper hand. I opened the door half awake, half dressed and fully expecting nothing good. There he was. Tall, gray overcoat, clean gloves, clipboard tucked under one arm. Not a speck of dust on him. The kind of man who didn't sweat unless it was written into protocol. He didn't say his name. He didn't need to. Just looked me up and down like I was a machine part in the wrong box. "You, Hawkins?" "Yes, sir. Walk with me." No greeting, no explanation, just that tone. Calm, clipped, official. The kind that says, "I'm not here to listen." We walked past the depot barracks, through the mud trail where the supply trucks used to backfire every morning. The air smelled like it hadn't decided whether to rain or not. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked like it had something important to say. I felt the chill wrap around my spine, not from the cold, from the silence. After a few minutes, he spoke. "You filed a report on April 17th. "Yes. It reached Berlin. Briefly." I said nothing. "Radar contact. Unconfirmed. No follow-up. No duplication. Your equipment is now off the grid." Still nothing from me. Then he stopped walking. "Help me understand, Mr. Hawkins. Why a report like that, with zero corroboration and no strategic value, needed to leave your station?" That was the moment I realized. This man didn't come to ask. He came to clean up. "I didn't send it to Berlin," I said, steady. "I handed it to operations, as protocol requires." He nodded. "Calm, too calm. And yet it traveled, which means someone moved it up the chain." I looked him dead in the eye. "Then maybe the chain wanted it moved." There was a pause, not long but heavy, like a train slowing down just before it hits the station, or a wall. He stepped in closer. "There are systems in place, Mr. Hawkins. Systems that work best when they are respected. And what system was working when we got shut down for doing our job?" That hit something. His face didn't change, but his breath did. A little too tight. A little too controlled. "I'm just here to collect context," he said. "No, you're here to make sure nothing like this gets repeated." He didn't answer. Didn't have to. They moved me 2 days later. Not court-martialed, not discharged. Just moved. Quietly. Efficiently. New post. New unit. Somewhere in the southern sector, pushing papers and counting spare radio tubes like I was born to count and die forgotten. No farewell, no reason, no incident report. Just gone. Larry got sent to a motor pool. Will ended up in logistics, handing out rations to a bunch of 19-year-olds who thought radar was something you read about in comic strips. They didn't fight it. Not because they gave up, but because they knew. This wasn't a battle you fought with fists or facts. This was a slow suffocation, the kind that starts with a memo and ends with your name being regretfully omitted. Now here's the twist nobody tells you. A week later, I got a letter. Typed. No return address. No signature. Just one sentence. The signal was real. Stay quiet. That's it. No instructions, no threat, no plea, just confirmation. One line to say, "You were right. Now disappear." You ever get told the truth just enough to ruin your sleep, but not enough to fix a damn thing? That was me. Every morning I woke up, I saw that screen in my head. The blip, the angle, the way Morgan pretended nothing happened. The way Wilkins looked at me like I was noise. But that letter, that one line, that was worse than all of it. I started writing again. Not reports this time, notes, diagrams. Quiet little truths I scratched out in a supply closet when no one was watching. I didn't know what I was building toward. Maybe nothing. But I knew what I wasn't doing. Staying quiet. Not in my head. Not in my hands. And then something strange happened. A young corporal, black kid, fresh from training, eager eyes quick with his hands, found me during break. "You're Charles Hawkins?" he asked, low. "I was, once," I replied. He pulled a folded paper from his coat. Unmarked. Unofficial. My handwriting. I stared. "Where'd you get this?" "Guy in signals. Said it helped him fix a frequency sweep no one else could figure out." He smiled. "It's passed around. That shook me harder than any transfer, any silence, any inspection. They tried to bury it, but something lived. What they didn't count on was that people watch, even in silence, even when the machine pretends not to blink. You've made it this far. Now buckle up. What's coming next won't ask for permission. You ever see a rumor outrun a regulation? It's a beautiful thing. Quiet, stubborn, and faster than any truck in the depot. You can burn the paper, reassign the man, seal the file, but once the truth's out, it finds its way into boots and coffee mugs and late-night whispers. That's exactly what started happening. 3 weeks after my reassignment, I started hearing echoes. Nothing direct. Just murmurs. Like the old rig was working again, but not in our hands. Somebody picked up a signal. Somebody remembered what we logged. A junior tech at another station said the radar hiccuped in the same quadrant. And guess what? The tech got pulled for retraining. I knew that move. I'd lived it. I kept quiet, not because I was afraid I was past that, but because silence is a scalpel, not a surrender. Sometimes you cut deeper by listening. I stayed in the depot, fixed broken radios, sorted useless parts, drank bitter coffee with men who hadn't seen the front or the sky in months. And I kept writing, always writing. Bits and pieces of that first signal. Patterns I remembered. Frequencies I heard late at night when the bass went quiet and the air got heavy. Then came the letter. This time it was slipped inside a ration crate. No envelope, no name, just one line typed on clean white paper. They're blind, Charles, but not deaf. No signature, no return. But whoever wrote it knew exactly what to say. And right then, I knew. They weren't done with me. Not the ones who tried to shut it down. The ones who still wanted to know what we saw. A week later, a van rolled into the depot. No markings, no orders. Out stepped a man in civilian clothes with a service cut and eyes like steel ball bearings. "You, Charles Hawkins?" That's what the jacket says. I was told you can fix things that don't want to be fixed. Depends who's asking. He didn't answer, just handed me a set of coordinates and walked away. No explanation, no title. Just the kind of silence that tells you it's real. The coordinates led me to an old supply outpost tucked in the trees near the northern sector. Nothing big, no guards, just a single concrete hut and a long wire antenna that didn't belong to any official schematic. Inside, equipment I hadn't seen in months. Our radar rig, or a clone of it. And standing by the console, Larry. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes lit up the moment he saw me. "Took you long enough," he said with a grin. "Thought they scattered us. They tried, but somebody, I still don't know who, made sure this place stayed off every list." I looked around. The machine was humming. A different pitch, but familiar. There were charts on the walls, logs, calculations. This wasn't an accident. This was resistance. We weren't alone either. A few others trickled in. Engineers, technicians. One pilot who didn't remember where he landed last. A network of ghosts. Too useful to disappear, but too dangerous to keep visible. Turns out the signal we saw, it wasn't isolated. It came back. Twice. Different sectors, same angle, same trajectory. And both times the official story said, interference, no contact. You see the pattern? That's when we started building. Not out of defiance, out of duty. A new rig. Shielded. Faster. Smarter. Something they couldn't ignore even if they tried. We pooled what little gear we had, rewired old transmitters, scrounged tubes and copper and tape from wherever it could be borrowed. Larry rigged the sweep timing. I reworked the filters. Others tuned the frequency range to lock onto what the standard systems called noise. They thought they'd moved us to silence. We were making a signal louder than they could ever suppress. Then came the night it hit. I was monitoring the new scope, barely 6 hours into calibration, when it pinged. Not once, not twice, but in sequence, fast, sharp, rising. I tapped the console, rechecked every setting, cross-checked with Larry's backup set. Same result. I looked up. Larry, you seeing this? He slid over. His face froze. That's not just a signal, he said. That's a code. We spent the next hour deciphering. It wasn't Morse, not exactly, but it followed rhythm, patterned, intelligent. We weren't looking at a German bomber. We were looking at someone listening back. We recorded it, logged it, backed it up on tape and hard copy. But no, we didn't send it through the official channels. That road had burned down long ago. Instead, we shared it with the underground network, quiet techs, operators, those reassigned men and women who still had ears in the system. And the reaction? Silence. Then vanishing. Stations we sent it to were scrubbed. Equipment malfunctioned. Personnel moved for safety. But one station didn't shut down. They responded. 3 days later, a tape arrived. Same type. Same format. On it, a new sequence. Same signal. Same source. Only this time it ended with a burst. 5 quick pings. Larry stared at it for 5 minutes straight. Then he stood up and said, "We're not just picking up echoes anymore." That was the moment I knew, whatever we'd started back in that little shack, it had grown teeth. You think that was loud? The next part, that's the thunder. And once it hits, there's no putting it back in the box. You ever hear the sky answer back? Not in thunder, not in wind. I'm talking about something colder, smarter, something that doesn't ask permission, just reminds you it's listening. That's what we heard that night. And no matter what came after, no matter who tried to spin it, bury it, or pretend they didn't hear a thing, that signal was real, and it made them sweat. We had just finished running diagnostics on the 3rd rebuild of our rig, this time with a higher gain modulator Larry smuggled in through a friend at Air Signal Command. Nobody asked how he got it. In our circle, how was a word we stopped using around Chapter 3. The shack was quiet except for the soft pulse of the power converter. Charts on the walls, notes stacked in crates, and that smell. Dust, solder, and something that always smelled like rain even when it wasn't raining. Larry was drinking cold coffee with one hand, tuning the dial with the other. I was checking alignment on the sweep arc. Everything felt too calm. Then the pulse changed. Subtle at first. Then sharper. 1 blip. 2. A pause. 3 more. Faster. I froze. Larry turned his head real slow, like even his eyes didn't want to believe it. You getting that? I nodded once. He adjusted the gain. The screen flashed again. Same rhythm, same location. Northwest vector, altitude consistent, velocity increasing. But this time, it didn't fade, it held steady. We tracked it for 36 minutes. It moved in clean lines, pivoted twice, not randomly. This was not weather, not debris, not a friendly aircraft. It was doing something. And it was doing it like it knew we were watching. And then, just as it neared the edge of range, it did something none of the others had done before. It repeated our own signal. That same frequency we had broadcast during our test loops last week. Our ID tag, our signature, bounced back to us. It was like hearing your own voice come out of someone else's mouth. Larry leaned in, eyes wide. They're not just there. They're responding. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Every hair on my neck was already standing. We recorded everything. 5 different mediums, backed it all up, made hard copies. I etched the sequence into metal, literally, just in case. But here's the part I still chew on at night. Less than an hour after the signal ended, we lost power. Not a flicker, not a storm, a kill switch. The whole station dropped cold, lights out, equipment off, battery fried, fuse blown. Larry ran out the back to check the relay. I went for the emergency generator. But before we even got to the edge of the lot, headlights appeared through the trees. 3 vehicles, blackout covers, no markings, and from them stepped people we'd never seen before. Not military, not exactly. One had a clipboard. The rest just had eyes, the kind that memorized rooms before you even opened your mouth. They didn't shout, didn't rush. They walked in like they'd been here before, like they had a map no one else was allowed to see. Clipboard man spoke first. You've been operating outside assigned channels. Larry stepped forward, firm. We've been monitoring patterns no one else would. No one else should, the man said. He opened the clipboard. Inside, transcripts, our logs, our maps, even the etched metal plate I had finished an hour ago. We'll take everything. You'll be reassigned. Consider this a containment effort. That word stuck. Containment. Not security. Not command. Containment. I stood tall. You can take the equipment, I said, but the signal's already out. He paused. How far? Far enough, I said. There's no stuffing it back in. He didn't answer, just nodded once. The team started packing up. Professional. Precise. Like they'd done this before. By morning, the shack was empty. Our rig, gone. Charts, burned. Even the tape reels. Taken. They drove us to separate locations. Larry went east. I went south. The rest, scattered like ash. No forwarding address. No questions answered. At my new post, a weather unit near the coast, they gave me a desk, a broken anemometer, and a smile like nothing ever happened. I was polite. I was quiet. But I knew what I knew. Then, one night I heard it again. Low, garbled, tucked between 2 civilian frequencies. But it was there. That pulse. Short, long, too short. 1, long. It was different now, like it had evolved, but it still carried our cadence. I smiled. Because the thing about trying to erase people like us, you forget, we learned how to listen long before they learned how to talk. And what we built, it didn't need a uniform or a file or a rank to keep speaking. It just needed someone to hear it. So next time they tell you nothing happened, ask them why they needed so many trucks to say nothing, And if you ever hear a signal you weren't supposed to, don't be afraid. You're not the only one. This was never just about a radar. It was about being seen, and making sure they couldn't unsee it.